Our tape today will be Was Jesus an Essene? Essene is a group of Jews, like a group like Sadducees and Pharisees that were supposedly knowledgeable about the Jewish law. It existed, as far as history knows, about 100 years before Christ and about 100 years after, and then somehow disappeared. Based on uh, conventional understanding about the Essenes and that they were seemingly part of the Jewish hierarchy, then the answer would probably no, that Jesus was not part of the Essenes. But further study, which in my case got brought on by listening to or reading some books by Edgar Casey, since the history is not real clear. Edgar Casey said that Jesus came from the Essenes, and then here's the proof of the pudding. The Essenes are part of a Carmelite group that goes back several centuries. The Carmelites were first were inaugurated by Elijah the prophet, who, by the way, was not Jewish. He was a Tishbite. He was on the other side of the river. What exactly nationality is a Tishbite, I can't quite recall. And then later on, you had the school of the prophets under Samuel, but again, they were a Carmelite order, and they were more or less descendants from the Elijah group. The Essenes were very spiritual, but also very frugal living, not presumptuous. Probably something like the Amish people who are still in existence today. Probably like what most people live, who were perhaps monks or priests in the modern day vernacular. They were given to a lot of work and a lot of servitude and not personal accumulation of wealth. Sort of more or less had everything in common, maybe like an earlier version of a communism, if you will. So now understand this, that the elders of it, in the book of Revelation, the 24 elders that worship Jesus or God or whatever, the 24 elders is 24 classes of people who understand the Jewish law. And based on your ability to understand Jewish law, almost like self-proclaimed lawyers of the day, then you got financially taken care of by the Jewish community, or basically the Jewish hierarchy, like the Sadducees and the Pharisees had. So, but the Carmelites were more like the more like a priesthood type thing, and so here's another thing that's interesting for me to throw in, is that when a person becomes like a Supreme Court justice in the Jewish religion, he has to have had 40 years of study in the law, as well as having personal experiences and maturity along the way. And usually this doesn't happen until after the age of 13, which is the age of adulthood in the Jewish religion, also known as the bar mitzvah. It could be boy or girl. And then, so 53 years of age is the usual age in which someone becomes a master in Israel. Some people start at the age of, or at their birth, and study the law, and then by the age of 40 they become masters. This is where Jesus becomes a master, because he's able also to perform miracles in addition to knowing the law. Every time he, and then also too, he was a priest. That's why he started his ministry at the age of 30. The Levitical priesthood goes from the ages of 30 to 50. So I also theorize that Paul was probably alive during the time of the crucifixion of Jesus, even though there's no perhaps direct statements to that effect. But given if you do the numbers, you know, he's he's still persecuting the Christians, um, which means he had probably done it before. The protocols of the day was that the Jews, though part of the in and about the Roman Empire, had authority to take care of their own matters amongst themselves. But when Herod came into power, and history will prove me right, he took away the powers from the Jews and decided to take it upon himself. That's why there was this argument about who should die on the Sabbath and who it should be. So here's an interesting little bit tidbit. They let Barabbas go. The word Barabbas means son of the Father. I thought Jesus was son of the Father, but according to Jewish types and shadows, in lieu of the sacrifice to be made, a scapegoat is also let go too. In this case, Barabbas is the scapegoat. I guess Jesus becomes the lamb, or is the lamb in that sense. So Jesus then is part of the Essenes of the accounts of Edgar Casey, which by the way are very hard to read at best, indicate that there were a group of 10 women in which any one of them could have been chosen, and somehow Mary was, and they're being chosen by God when that was dependent upon a lot of things about their servitude and their purity, which probably more had a reference to their focus, not that they run around really pure and weren't people who had feelings about different things, as we all know about the feeling part. So now the Carmelites history goes all the way up past the time of Christ, even up until I think the 12th or 13th century. Something got lost, and another group developed under the auspices of Saint John of the Cross, who was in the beginning or later part of the 14th century and into the beginning of the 15th, and then of course during that same time there was another woman, a well-noted nun or sister named Saint Teresa of Avila. There was an argument between this group and another group that had finally resurfaced that had its ties all the way back to Elijah, the prophet. And then this Pope at the time, I forgot his name, I think his name was Pope Innocent, of all things, said that they should just be merged together, be one and the same thing. Maybe on the surface they look like they're probably one and the same thing, but mechanically speaking, well, of course, the other one had a lot more years of experience than St. John did. St. John, I've read his books, the Sermon on Mount Carmel, ironically enough, Carmel, and then The Dark Night of the Soul, and then The Flame of Love. And then there's books by St. Teresa as a spiritual accounts. To me, it's a bunch of gibberish. She kind of doesn't make much sense, but then she makes sense in a later book called The Interior Castles. So the way in which they wrote the books and the stuff they wrote about is very similar to the original Carmelites, development of the soul and so on. Very few writers in that regard amongst any of the Catholic writers, with maybe the exception of St. Bonaventura, and then amongst the Christian religious community, the only one that's in that class of writing would be Watchman Nee in his writings, The Spiritual Man, and also the other book, The Latent Power of the Soul, and a few others that might fit in. Anyway, I'm kind of running out of time here. So the answer is yes, Jesus was part of the Essenes, and no, he's not part of the Essenes based on conventional understanding of today.